Hello and welcome to another Challenge Warlord Gold Strategy Guide. My name is Renstaud and today we will be covering Auchindoun. So we get to start right here, right next to the first boss, which is very nice. None of that bullshit RP running. Once we get up here, we want to start and unload on the Soulbinder. She will cast a mind control on a random party member, so be sure when Binding Will goes out to interrupt it. Bend Will, whatever it's called. Once she's dead, you can continue with the next pack and blow up the cleric. He will cast the bubble on everyone, or the majority of the people in this group. So when he goes to begin casting that, Void Shell, be sure you try to get a direct stun on him. We didn't have one available, which is fine. It does happen sometimes. And once the cleric is dead, you can go ahead and finish off one more of those mobs if you want. But it's recommended to go ahead and just pull the next group and work on the Spirit Tender. Interrupt all of his Void mendings. And when he goes to cast Void Shift, if you've got a direct stun available, like a Asphyxiate or anything, any kind of hard stun, be sure you stun him during that cast, because it is uninterruptible with a typical kick like a Mind Freeze or Strangulate, anything like that. But if he gets one off, that's fine. Just continue bursting down the rest of that trash around him while you're working him down. Once he's dead, we'll all get knocked back just like in normal and heroic. Get a little RP action going on. No one destroys the Auchindoun or disturbs the Auchindoun or whatever. So we could sit here and wait for the boss to leap to the middle like a badass he is. And we will be lusting on the first boss. So we pop lust, pop cooldowns, get through him quickly. Just be sure to avoid anything on the ground. The little orbs that appear that radiate a little AoE pulse. Just stay away from them and you'll reduce group damage. Stay away from the AoE arcs that's dropped on the ground. Just stay out of those when he goes to cast his fate and whatnot that erupts them. Here it comes. They erupt. So here comes Consecrated Light. So everyone else needs to get behind the shield. The tank can stay out if he's got any kind of magic mitigation, like a Death Knight especially. Even Death Knight DPS can stay out during that to keep uptime on the boss going. And once that's done, you just continue bursting them down, and you should have them dead by the well before the next Holy Shield, hopefully. Once he's dead, you can hot tail it over to the next trash pack. There's a few ways you can deal with this trash. You can stagger it. If you've got really high single target and bursty AoE DPS, you can take this pack or this hallway a little bit slower. We kind of staggered the pull. We did what looks like roughly 3 packs. AoE them down. Once we got a few of them dead, we started moving to the next pack. Just if you're going to do the big pull in the hallway, be careful not to pull the very last pack before the second boss. It'll be too much, and the worst part about it too is you'll have multiple dots on multiple people, and on top of that you'll get stunned, you'll get chain gripped into shit while being hit by other shit, and you'll get rocked. I mean, right here already popped into Purgatory, and it's just a lot of damage coming out. The big thing with this trash too is the Magus will do arcane bombs. So melee has to be careful of their positioning, because arcane bombs do quite a bit of damage when they explode. Even ranged, if ranged or healers are getting up close and personal with the trash as well, they have to be very careful. So since we did 3 of the 4, we'll just go ahead and blow up these assholes here before we pull the final pack. We'll get these guys down. Again, knock out the Magus first, and then you can take out the Arbiter. Just be mindful of the Arbiter. They will stun a random person. Typically, they always stun the tank. We had one run where the Arbiter would just, for some reason, stun our monk, and it was pretty aggravating, at least for him. So as soon as you finish these 2 assholes off, you can pull the next pack. So here we want to pull this entire group, and we just got to be careful with it because they drop a little AoE cloud on the ground. It deals quite a bit of damage. We want to knock out the Soul Priest as quickly as possible, so we reduce the dot damage on our entire group, that Shadow Word pain shit that she likes to cast. So we eliminate her first, and then we just work the rest down. There we go, probably going to get hit by some of these arcane orbs. We got lucky. They didn't detonate on us when we was within range. It's just, that trash pack's very annoying. Can be. So with this boss, with Niam, we are going to pull her roughly to the center, or just slightly offset of the center. The reason being is the Soul Well that she'll cast. We want to be able to stay within melee range of her and continue with our damage uptime on her during the little transition right there. Death Knights can Dark Simulacrum. Both of her abilities, the dot is the hardest one to get because it's random when she casts it. Sometimes she casts it on the pull, sometimes she casts it at mid-fight. It's a hard one to get, but the Mind Spikes can be Dark Simmed. And the dot right there, she casts it right after her Mind Spike. And it's just a hard one to get sometimes. But if you're able to get it, it's a lot of damage on the boss. And it can easily give you an extra 5 or 10 seconds. It's worth trying to steal. If you don't get it, it's not a big deal. I mean, as long as you've got the strong single target burst, I mean, we got roughly 20k across the board or more. I mean, if you've got more than that, you'll be just fine without it. And once she's down, what's going to happen here with this hallway, the Infernal that comes out, range, will kite and kill it, while the tank and any melee will go over to the next pack of trash and deal with the big wild imps, with the big casters, because they do a lot of damage. Their casts, the Pyromancers, they can pretty much one-shot you. So they have to be interrupted, they need to be stunned, but they need to be bursted down quickly. So it's like right there, didn't have an interrupt available, didn't have a Strangulate because it didn't have the rune. And as demonstrated right there, our monk, he got just obliterated by a cast because his interrupt, you probably can't see it on the screen here, but his interrupt did go off, but the cast went off anyway, which was unfortunate. That does happen sometimes. It's very rare that it does. So just be prepared to counter that with a cooldown if it doesn't look like your interrupt was taken by the mob. Now the Fell Guards, their knockback sends you flying much further, does a lot more damage as well. And what we want to do is get them down about halfway and then pull them into the next pack of Pyromancers. And again, we want to use AoE interrupts if possible, so Arcane Torrent, if you're a Blood Elf, is king right here. And we also want to cycle in AoE stuns if possible. And we do want to try to bank one for the next pull. Now with this trash pool right here, if you have a Death Knight in your group and he is spec'd, as I am, with a Gorfine's Grasp, this is an amazing pool. Just step in the middle, grip everything to you, get a stun out, cycle AoE interrupts or single target interrupts. Focus the Pyromaniacs first. Kill them first. They need to die. Because if all of them decide to cast on 2 or 3 of your random party members at the same time and their casts are successful, you will pretty much lose the entirety of your group right here. So you burst them down, get them stunned, and again, melee, just be mindful of where the tank is facing the Fel Guards. There's sometimes a lot of dancing here. Their attacks are roughly on par with one another. So they're casting at about the same time, so they should all do their knockback at around the same time right here. If they do get offset, just be mindful, melee, to step out and away until the casts are completed. And once they're done, pretty much pull the boss right away. Pre-pot, pull the boss, and your lust will be back up during this fight. And we do want to use lust again once it's available. The goal with this fight is to only have one air phase. Now if the tank gets hit with Fel Lash, depending on how quickly you're pulling this boss after trash, you might want to either kite the boss or pop a moderate cooldown and just take the extra damage. But in this case, we have a Druid Overlord, so was pretty much allowed to do whatever we want, which is an amazing thing. Now when he summons these adds, you want your Druid to lock down, as seen there in the upper right hand corner, lock down the Fel Guard that spawns and just remove it from the fight. There's no need to kill it. No need at all. However, the Cackling Pyromaniacs that do spawn, those need to be dispatched as well. They have to be killed. And when the boss lands, as demonstrated here, he will shoot out a shit ton of fire from where he lands. So don't get clipped by it or hit by it or anything. And then, as soon as Lust is available, pop Lust, just like we did. And just continue focusing him down. The goal again is to have him killed before the next Claws of Argus, the next air phase. Once he's down, now take note here. Only one of us has the debuff on us, which is Font. Alright, but when we port over here, people are still getting the debuff. This can happen. This actually costs us about 15-20 seconds because we had to wait for this to fall off. So just be prepared to deal with this and to potentially sit here for about 20 seconds. Because you do have to let that fall off. It does a lot of pulsing damage if you're next to anyone else. So with these 3 mini bosses here on each platform, just focus down the masters. Don't even worry about the pets. Just, I mean, interrupt anything you can. You can stun the pets at least. But just blow down the masters so you can get onto the next platform. Now with this next mini boss, you want your Druid to root the big Fel Lord, the big Fel Guard, the Guardian of Gulkosh. So there he is, rooted in the back, just removed from the fight entirely. We don't have to dick with any damage from Whirlwind or anything else. This boss can be stunned, so be sure you interrupt any cast you can, particularly his life drain. It does heal for quite a bit if it goes off for too long. So I'm going to try to steal one of his dots right here. With the Dark Sim, hopefully he casts it off, and there it is. Got an ability, I can cast it on him. The Unstable Affliction helps with a lot of damage and burst on him. And again, you just you can stun him and interrupt. He's one of the 3 that we have to deal with. He's one of the easiest ones to kill quickly. Because, again, we just removed the Fel Guard from the fight. He can be stunned. So there's a drain life, got the interrupt. And this asshole here can be aggravating at times. When he goes to do his rain of fire, sometimes he casts it on melee. Hopefully, nothing against ranged, but hopefully he casts it on the ranged group. Because he casts so often that interrupting is just aggravating as shit. And of course, you can dark sim his abilities again to get more burst on him. So be sure you don't stand in rain of fire. Interrupt any cast you can. If your Death Knight calls out for dark sim, avoid the interrupt. Let him get the extra damage up. Now for this final boss here, relatively simple. Interrupt anything you can possible. Now there are times where you might miss an interrupt or an interrupt doesn't quite kick over. But when he goes into the next phase, you want to interrupt like Rain of Fire and his Chaos Bolts. The Chaos Bolt will one-shot you. It is vital to try to interrupt that. If you can, try to Dark Simulacrum it. It will do a shit ton of damage to the boss. On one attempt, we was able to do about 10% additional damage to him just with the one ability, but it's hard to snag. So, I mean, you just gotta be prepared for it. But in any case, it's best to just go ahead and interrupt it if you can. So there's Chaos Bolt. Don't have an interrupt available. So our melee, our monk, he was able to get the interrupt off luckily. Hopefully my interrupt will be available right about now. And as you see up there in the upper corner again, we have the Infernal. He's removed from the fight again by having him rooted away from the group. So there's another Chaos Bolt. We don't have any interrupts available at this point. And it just nuked our healer. It's just, again, this is a bitch fight just because of that one ability. And we did have an instance where he cast Chaos Bolt 3 times back to back. And we was able to, at least that one time, interrupt them all. And then he cast it again after a Rain of Fire, and it was just a clusterfuck. This fight can be a clusterfuck if he decides to spam Rain of Fire and Chaos Bolts. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you, but it happened to us on one attempt. And then once you get him to around 10%, 8%, he'll do his little RP, I'm running away shit, and unfortunately the timer keeps ticking at that point. So be sure you have a healthy amount of time, and you'll have your gold. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.